You look nice.
A witcher's compliments.
Hello everyone and welcome to a special and final episode in the series of things you may have missed in The Witcher 3. I don't know when exactly this video will be published, but it should be right around the 10th anniversary of the game. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years already, despite the fact that so much has happened over the course of the last decade, and sadly much of that hasn't been very good, both in my personal life and certainly on a global scale. The Witcher 3, however, has been a consistently wonderful thing since the day it came out, and in celebration of that, I would like to show you a bunch of things you may not have seen just yet. I'm afraid this may not be among the most exciting episodes, since I have exhausted nearly everything there is to talk about in the game, but you could always check the previous ones down in the description. I will do some more lollygagging towards the end, but for now, let's get started with the details. One thing I did not know until recently, which actually explains a lot about Geralt, is the fact that he carries around a copy of Kama Sutra with him, provided he has the right saddle. It comes with these Arcanian saddlebags, which can be obtained either by winning one of the Skellige horse races or by purchasing it from the Putrid Grove in Novigrad. Once you put it on Roach, there will be a book attached to the side, and on it, in glagolitic letters, we can read the words Kama Sutra. What's more, Geralt is not the only person in possession of the book. Some male sorcerers in the game carry it as well. We can see it on the one we save from the witch hunters in the outskirts of Novigrad, and also during the conversation with Carduin, who was also in The Witcher 2. And not only that, but he had the book even then, so it's a bit of a detail you may have missed in The Witcher 2 as well. And while on the topic of eroticism, let us talk about Triss. One thing I hadn't realized during the Masquerade quest is that there is an obvious reference to the Pretty Woman movie at the very beginning. You know how we meet this drunk guest who accuses Triss of being a lowly whore, I guess?
Don't be foolish, Vivian. I'd recognize that mane anywhere. You might play the Great Dame now, but before that Baron Edward something pulled you from the gutter, you were a common...
Enough.
He refers to Triss as Vivian and to her previous lover as Baron Edward, and these happen to be the names of the main characters in the film, where Vivian is indeed hired by Edward to attend several high-life events and so on. Additionally, this place is actually packed with details, and I have mentioned it on several occasions in the previous episodes, but I would like to bring up a rather funny dialogue option which I imagine not many people go for. It's where you take your masks off, and Triss mentions how even she is not sure how she's managed to convince all the other mages in Novigrad to follow her. You can say that she's charming, a natural leader, and so on, but you can also say it's simply because they don't have any other choice. Triss is not very happy to hear it, and you can then respond in one of three ways, only one of which she truly likes.
They don't have anyone else.
Oh, sheesh, thanks, Geralt. If you meant to say something nice, try again.
Your eyes, they're like stars.
Geralt.
Really, they're incredibly shiny. Could be the wine. You better not drink anymore.
You're terrible, you know that?
Someone's coming. You look nice.
A witcher's compliments.
Someone's coming.
Is it Albert?
No. I'm glad we came here together.
Really? Despite all these bloated nobles, the bowing, the fake smiles?
Not often we get the chance to just talk.
Something you've been meaning to say to me?
Someone's coming.
And now that we brought up Triss, did you know that there is at least one hostile NPC with a rather unique reaction to being set on fire?
Unhand me, sir! I could be your daughter!
A role play? I relish the thought.
And it is Iris von Evereck's greatest fear. Both versions of this NPC relish in it, almost as if they're taunting you to do it some more. And they are not very easy to set on fire either. You can reliably do it with Igni only after countering their charging attack. You can also do it while holding down your Firestorm, but the footage of me doing it here is with God mode enabled, because they keep interrupting it. Also, it's worth mentioning that the real Olgierd, despite resembling these creatures and using the same animations, does not actually behave this way. And speaking of combat animations, here's another thing I realized only recently. I have a feeling most of you know this, but you can parry and even break people's spears in combat. It has to be the right kind of spear though. Usually we find enemies with halberds or poleaxes, and those can neither be parried nor broken. But if it's a simple spear, usually found on bandits, it can indeed be parried, and if you parry in the last moment, instead of the traditional riposte, you actually break the spearhead and the enemy will continue using it as a wooden stick. These types of enemies also have a kind of charging attack which will break your guard, but they don't use it very often.
Come on!
And speaking of weapons, we have to talk about the ultimate sword in the game, the Aerondight. I'm sure many people try to get it as soon as they can, but something I've tried a few times over the years actually, and without success, is to actually fail the trials of virtue and see what happens in that case. In order to do it, we need to finish nearly the entire expansion in such a way that we never get any points in at least one of the virtues. In all my attempts to do this, I always get stuck with no quests left to do and the old man still waiting for me to prove some of my virtues. But after some serious testing, I found that this likely happens due to a bug. Apparently, the game doesn't properly register the fact that you failed to acquire a certain virtue if you do the quest in a way where you skip the choice which gives you the virtue point. And this only happens in some cases. For example, if you fail to catch the Umbra during the Talking Roach quest, the game does not register the fact that you did not encourage Roach to forgive the spirit, which can happen only if you catch it. Similarly, if you choose to visit the Unseen Elder and finish the game that way, without ever visiting the Fairy Tale Land, you will get stuck with the objective to look for ways to prove your generosity, because the game seems to wait for you to decide whether or not to buy Sienna her ribbon.
Sugar plum. The only thing I hand out for free is a first hit.
At any rate, I managed to circumvent those issues by actually completing both the compassion and the generosity virtues, but successfully failing the wisdom. For that, you need to do 6 things. Do not correctly guess that Milton is in a greenhouse.
Could be a cave, I guess.
Now that's just silly.
Do not lift the curse from the white. Do not lift the curse from Daphne either. Basically try to lift it on your own immediately and fail.
Fucking fairy flips, what the demon happened there?
Do not encourage Hugo to make peace with his brothers.
Witcher! What are you doing?
Do not correctly guess the order of candles during the quest in the ancient amphitheater.
Wrong.
And finally, lose the Gwent tournament.
I'd hoped to face you, but participation alone counts for something. Here, a consolation prize.
Thanks.
And of course you have to get all the other virtues, which is rather easy. For example, you can win the fist-fighting quests for Valor, finish the tourney with Guillaume for Honor, let Marlene stay at your place for Compassion, and give the poor male boy 5 coins for Generosity.
See what it says here? Postage paid. Won't weasel any coin out of me. Now scram.
I knew I should have wiped dirt on that stamp. Bumbotch!
With all that done, you can then return to the lake and get a small, unique scene where the spirit of the old man is disappointed with you and the Aerondight vanishes from the water.
It seems failure is your lot in this quest, Witcher. To lay claim to virtue is easy. To prove it, much harder. But perhaps one day, who knows?
And you can no longer walk on it either. Speaking of unique scenes, here are two more, which have actually been removed from the game, but thanks to the good people at Brothers in Arms, they can be optionally enabled. First, there used to be a bit of dialogue with Ciri when searching for Skjal's grave. It was supposed to happen between the scenes in the graveyard and the pit where we find the body. The two are back to back now, but initially they planned on having this exchange.
Bastards.
What?
Beyond the village, there's a pit. They fill it with sheep taken by Blackleg. Crabs pick at their bones at night. Rip their heads off!
Ciri, these people, they've endured a lot.
That is no excuse! Nothing can excuse this!
It was probably removed because the trek is needlessly long, or because they thought Ciri comes across as a little too aggressive. I suppose she has a good reason though. In a way, it was thanks to Skjal's actions that these people survived.
Had Skjal not led me away then, why they would have reduced Loferton to ash.
What would the spectres be wanting of some lass who—
I am not some lass!
And the other conversation I wanted to show you is during the quest with the plague victims in Velen. There used to be a dialogue option from which we learn that it was the Nilfgaardians who brought the plague. Or so people think.
Mention some pox from the Black Ones.
Aye, well, they brought an illness to Velen. Treat their own, they do, where all folk drop like flies. Oh, I just got waft. Oh, the stench.
Who blames the Nilfgaardians? Who says it's their plague?
Alderman of Lindenvale. Twarin paid me to bury these corpses in a ditch, he says, far from the village as possible. We don't want folk panicking. Not the dumbest man, no. A folk activist or some such.
Some of you probably know that there was supposed to be a large storyline involving certain Nilfgaardians, the plague, demonology, and the original Devil's Pit. The quests were meant to involve Jorveth, who actually got sick from the plague. They also contained a whole different version of the Reason of State. Roach himself could kill Radovid, Ves could kill Thaler under the right circumstances, and so on. I will talk about it at length in a future video. Speaking of people dying, allow me to bring up the Morgue in Novigrad.
His genitals. We ought to inspect those.
I see. You clearly find gonads fascinating.
Not too long ago, I realized that there is a small scene at the gate of the morgue after the serial killer attacks Priscilla. Normally, we go there with von Gratz, but if we tell him that we're not ready to go just yet...
We can discuss this en route. Are you ready?
No. Need to tend to something first.
In that case, we shall meet by the Kingfisher. I'll await you there.
I'll get whoever did this, Dandelion. Even if it's Hierarch Hemmelfart himself.
Thanks. We can visit the main gate, which is locked, and if we try to interact with the guard nearby, a cutscene will play.
The word is, it's more like a...
Need to see your pass.
Don't have one, but I do have a proposition.
Need a pass from the esteemed hunters to enter. That, or a morgue worker to vouch for you.
There is a broken camera angle, so perhaps it wasn't properly tested and polished, but it is available by default without any mods. I suppose at some point they may have intended for us to get some sort of pass from the witch hunters, but who knows? At any rate, we go a little north from here into the nearby cave. There is a nice reference inside that is quite easy to miss if you do not light up your torch and look up when you reach the end. But if you do, you'll see that one of the walls and the ceiling are covered in all sorts of red drawings. And they seem to be a copy of the ones in the Bhimbetka caves, if I'm pronouncing it right. It's a place in India to which we can apparently trace some of the earliest signs of human life in that part of the world, with evidence suggesting human activity around 100,000 years ago. Meanwhile, some of the oldest surviving paintings seem to be anywhere between 12 and 40,000 years old, which is quite astonishing. However, we go back to Sunny Toussaint and the ending of Blood and Wine. Have you noticed that there are a bunch of characters who will attend the ceremony where Syanna kills Anna Henrietta if we solve their issues during their personal quests? Upon closer inspection, we can spot people such as Guillaume and Vivienne, assuming we have transferred the curse to him. Another couple we can spot is Jacquette and Francois, that is, if we finish their quest by persuading the man to return home and tell the woman that he does not wish to get married. Sadly, it seems he failed at that.
Francois has returned. We marry in a week's time.
We can also see the organizer of the Gwent tournament, who promotes the Skellige faction. This is if we took part in the tournament, even if we ended up losing. Bridget, the 13th century woman, is here as well, if we completed the fistfighting quests. And apparently, even the lady who lost her ring at the palace gardens, which is a wonderful detail. Here are several more. Have you noticed, for example, that, again in Beauclair, over here, there is, I think there's a name for it, for these types of pictures that appear to change shape based on the angle from which you look at them? There is one such painting on the wall here, which changes its orientation based on where we look at it from. Speaking of paintings in Beauclair, a viewer of mine shared a speculation about this portrait, which can be seen at Oriana's place, as well as a couple of gates in the city, and that it actually depicts one of the founders of CD Projekt Red. His name is Marcin Iwinski, if that's how it's pronounced, and I must say, there is definitely a resemblance, especially with this weary picture of his, so it might be him. Anyway, next up, I have several glagolitic inscriptions for you. I'm sure you've noticed that there is something written on the heads of the Reavers. Well, there seem to be two different inscriptions. One of them says this. I believe it's pronounced Rodzina, and it means family. A very similar word actually means homeland in Bulgarian. The other inscription is longer and a little more confusing. According to my interpretation, it says this. I can't quite figure out the last symbol. If I had to guess, I would say either a P or a V or an SH. If I Google it with any of these proposed letters though, it keeps suggesting one of these two words instead. And the meaning seems to be, I've had enough of these daddies. I'm sure Polish people will tell us more about it in the comments. What I do remember, however, is that when translating other inscriptions in the game, I had once stumbled upon something similar. It was in English, not Polish, but it said something like, "Fuck these daddies." It had the word father or dad used in a similar derogatory way. So perhaps it is a thing in Poland. I think it was in the creepy house in White Orchard. Anyway, you might also be wondering what this inscription says. It can be seen up on some of the buildings in Beauclair, and it is tricky as well. First, it's upside down, and then it seems to be in Japanese. Apparently it's a sort of culinary proverb, and it means the bean paste that looks like a bean paste is not a good bean paste. Speaking of food, here's another one about drink. It is written on the shirt of the sommelier, or however it's pronounced, the wine taster, the wine expert who gets summoned by Anna Henrietta. It says, in vino veritas, which in Latin means truth in wine, or in wine there is truth. It is usually meant in a sense that drinking has a tendency to reveal how you truly feel, what you really think or really want to say, and so on. But it's also very literal in this case, because the drops of wine reveal the true mastermind behind the killings. So it's a wonderful use of that phrase. And I was also surprised at how many different languages have a similar saying. And now that I mentioned the scene with the wine tasting, I was reminded of another detail that I don't think I've mentioned. This area here is full of colorful flags. And if Anna Henrietta dies, all of them, and all across the city too, get replaced with pure black. And there are other small things around the city too, which I don't think I've mentioned before. We can see some Celtic crosses, a French rooster, or a Belgium rooster. A Belgian-French rooster. There are several depictions of the Dance of Death, but sadly I am not much of a historian or an artist, so I can't really tell you much more about them. Instead, I would like to end the list with a bit of a mystery. Right here, in this house, close to the cursed chapel, there is a wooden beam with carved initials. I imagine they are once again mirrored, since I can't recognize this character, and so it probably reads C plus H. I cannot think of whom this might be referring to. The only people that come to mind are Ciri and Hjalmar, but it seems an unlikely thing to write, especially here. The house is in an area that is mostly used for the quests in Hearts of Stone, so I looked at the names of the people from Olgierd's band and the insane mother who killed her daughters nearby, but none of it seems to fit. So unless it truly is Ciri plus Hjalmar, it may actually be a hidden love note by one of the developers. Do let me know if you have any ideas. Finally, I would like to take a moment and thank the viewers who shared with me over the years a good amount of the details featured in this video. Most of what I haven't found personally here comes from two people. The first one is Sasha Lemova, a lovely lady who has caught many of the references in paintings and landscapes in the game. And second is Mr. Suspicious Newt. He has shared a bunch of things with me over the years, mostly about Blood and Wine, and he's also the man who posted that theory on Reddit about the crones cursing Vivienne. It even got a response from CDPR staff. Two more viewers who need to be mentioned here for their contributions are also Yuda Pratama. I have them to thank for the scene at the Morgue, and also Miss Taiga Lila, whose Nilfgaardian art you may have seen in my videos or elsewhere, for the burning animations detail of Olgierd's clones. And with that, I believe we're done. Done for good, in fact, because currently I do not have plans for any further Details Missed videos in The Witcher 3. I would like to thank everyone who's been watching and commenting and been with me, in a sense, over all these years, especially my Patreon supporters and YouTube members, and of course, all the developers at CDPR, both past and present, who have invested so much of themselves into The Witcher 3 and made it the amazing and, frankly, life-changing game that it is. And Andrzej Sapkowski, of course, for all the wonderful books. Alright, until the next video, stay tuned and be good.
By the way, that spectacle with the coin, what was that?
Emperor's got lots. Couldn't see why he shouldn't share some with us.
Is that what this was about? From the start?
No, it's always been about you. Only you.
It sure seemed like it was about the coin in there.
Ciri,
If it wasn't, you shouldn't have accepted it. Say no more.